Okay, interesting show today. What's going on? Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday morning, 1 week away from Draft-a-thon. Woo!
Yes.
4 to 10 p.m.
Yes, sir.
Eastern Time. Some of your favorites will be there. Joe Pisapia, Jake Seeley, Joey Wright, Tara Roberts, many, many, many more. Ben Gretsch is going to open the show with us. Dave, Jamie, Heath, Chris. We're going to play some games. We're going to talk fantasy. We're going to do a draft. Pete Prisco, Will Brinson, Nick Costos, they're coming on. Nathan Segura, Jason Horowitz, they're coming on. It's going to be a freaking awesome show. We'll see you next week. We'll tell you about it more. But we've got a topic today that only one of the three of us actually believes is a topic. So we're going to...
Incorrect.
Incorrect is correct.
Okay. All right. So we're trying to figure out the difference between the avoid list and the busts lists that we did a week ago. And there may not be much of a difference. That's okay. But yeah, all right, Heath,
we've seen both the lists and we can confirm there is not a difference. The argument is that you are saying there should be a difference. Like Dave made an avoid list, looks remarkably similar to his bust list. I tried to use a different set of ADP because I knew that same thing would happen to me. And it still looks remarkably similar to my bust list. And so you are going to explain to Dave and I what the difference is between a player you are avoiding at his draft cost and a player on your bust list.
Right. So a player that I'm avoiding, to me, I don't necessarily think they're going to be bad or not, perform at that value, but I just don't want them on my team. I don't get excited about them. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Before the injury, which hopefully is not severe, and he could be back for week 1 against Arizona, which would be awesome. Terry McLaurin. I understood exactly where he was ranked. I thought it made sense there. I never drafted him. I just didn't. I wasn't going to call him a bust because he's always like a top 24-ish wide receiver, and that's where he was being drafted, and I figured that's probably where he would finish. I didn't see the upside, so he was on my avoid list. I'd rather skip him. This was the thought process, a few weeks ago. I'll skip him. I'll take Dotson next round. Obviously, they're going, pretty similarly now. Dotson might go ahead of him, whatever. So that's a guy. I'll give you another example. As we've done more and more drafts, when I look at, Waller's got some helium now, so he's going kind of early. Pitts goes maybe not long after that. Hawkinson too. Kittle and Goddard are two guys. Well, Kittle's got a crazy ADP. Like we all have him. Like he's going like round 4, early round 5. We don't like that. But if I were in a draft with you guys, Kittle would still be there in round 6, round 7. At that point, there are so many wide receivers and running backs that I want to take. I don't take tight ends in that range. And so I skip Kittle and Goddard. They're mostly on my avoid list because I want other positions at that time. And then I skip Evan Ingram because I just don't understand where he's ranked. He should be ranked ahead of Kincaid and Laporta, but he's got, to me, hardly any upside. I skip him. So it's like a strategy thing and a tiers thing. I get why those guys are there. I don't think they're going to be busts at that draft value, but I don't want them on my team. They don't make sense for my roster. Does that make sense to you guys?
Sounds like you're picking busts.
No, it's not that at all. I think there's a clear difference.
It's more of a vibes thing.
No, it's not that. I think it's an upside thing in many of these cases. It's not like I don't think he's being drafted as tight end 7 and I think he's going to be.
But it's your vibe about their upside. Like you don't think Dallas Goedert has upside, but he was on almost 1,000-yard pace last year and plays on one of the best offenses in football. It's not difficult to make a Dallas Goedert upside case.
I think he's got tremendous upside if there's an injury to one of the two guys. I don't think he has a huge upside if there isn't. It's more Kittle, I guess, than Goddard anyway. But
and we know Kittle has insane upside.
The difference between a bust and a void is probably if I'm calling someone a bust, I don't think they're going to meet their ADP. If I'm calling someone in a void, they might meet their ADP, but I just don't want them on my team. And a lot of people draft like me, where there is a little bit more emotion to it, right? And let me get Schaefer in here because Schaefer I think has back. There's just guys. For some guys, I don't play this game, but for some fantasy managers, I had him last year and he burned me. There's no way I'm drafting him. I don't play that game. But Schaefer, you get what I'm talking about here with the avoid list, right?
I really don't think I have to say much because I thought you said it perfectly how I feel. For example, I would avoid. I haven't been drafting Joe Mixon at all, but I don't think he's a bust. But I've had opportunities to draft him. I just don't really want him on my team.
There you go.
So I'm like avoiding him, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be a bust because volume alone, he should be great. But I don't really want him because of like the whole upside thing, how you explained.
So how is this not a vibes thing?
Fine, call it a vibes thing. That's fine.
No, I think
No,
you're
how is
right.
it not a bust thing? You're picking players that are staring you in the face, and you're going, nah.
Because I'm avoiding him.
Yeah.
I'm avoiding it.
Thomas is not saying that Joe Mixon is going to be a bust there. He's just saying that he personally, it's almost like I would tell other people it's fine to take Joe Mixon there, but I'm not, he's just not for me. That's what Thomas is saying. And I think that's, no, I mean, I don't think you should laugh at that because I think a lot of people approach drafts that way.
I'm not laughing at you like I'm just saying like that's fine. That you don't, those are certain guys that you don't want to draft that have nothing to do with how many fantasy points you're going to score. Is that what you're saying?
I don't,
It's a don't want to draft list.
but it's not a bust list. There's a big difference. A bust is a much harsher.
Right. What I'm saying is I don't have a list of players that I don't want to draft for reasons independent of how many fantasy points I think they're going to score. The guys I don't want to draft are because I don't think it's entirely value dependent. It's because I don't think they're going to score enough points to justify their cost.
Yeah, those are the guys I don't want to draft.
These are also that, right, Thomas? I mean, it is also about fantasy points. It's not based on a projection or anything. But Tom, who are you? Someone you're taking over Joe Mixon at that spot?
Let me see some.
Like, are you taking Rashad White over him?
No.
I mean,
no, I wouldn't do that. No.
Okay.
That actually, Rashad White is somebody I would avoid. But I don't necessarily think he's going to be a bust. I don't really know how to explain it, honestly.
Well,
but
it's
Azer, I think you did a great job.
Yeah.
I thought, Azer, you did a great job of explaining it. And I think Heath is right. It is kind of like a vibes thing.
Yeah, that's fine. So I can dig the vibes. Right? Like people want to be excited about the guys on their team. They want to be, oh, I'm so pumped. I drafted this guy.
Of course.
You don't want to take boring players.
Right. And I'm not disagreeing that exists or that you guys I'm not putting you down for saying that you do it that way. I'm saying when I do a draft and my rankings are there in the draft room, I just like there's 2 or 3 or 4 guys at the top of the rankings. And well, that guy's not going to be there next time. I'm going to take him. It's not like I don't.
All right. That's cool. That's cool. So I don't even know if we should go through the avoid list, but give me 3 players that you are currently avoiding. And either of you can start. I'll call on Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Azer. Najee Harris, I'm avoiding. His ADP is the first pick of round 3. I think it's too soon. I believe in Jaylen Warren being the more explosive running back in Pittsburgh, but more importantly, I'm buying into Kenny Pickett. Apparently, the training camp practices were amazing. The preseason work's been amazing. This is a Steelers team that might throw the ball a little bit more than we're all giving him credit for. I think that hurts Najee Harris a lot. So somebody I'm definitely avoiding with an early round 3 pick. Now, here, maybe let me pause on this for a second. Would I avoid him if he's staring me in the face in late round 3? Like,
yes, I would.
Is that kind of what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking, that you sit there and he's in this range of running backs. Because I think at this point, Najee's going to fall so far. Some people might be able to take him in late round 4, and I still wouldn't even do that, knowing the other running backs on the board. But you probably would. You've always been higher on Najee. But like if Dobbins,
not lately.
right. So Dobbins is on the board, and Madison is on the board, and Pierce is on the board. You might have Najee ranked there, but you might.
I'm taking Pierce.
Yeah. What about the other guys who take Dobbins?
I might, if it's PPR, I might take Najee.
All right.
But that's how I have it ranked. Maybe Heath, is it a difference of like people who do rankings every day and update them every day versus people who don't do rankings? And so when they sit down in their draft room, they're looking at a list provided by somebody else and they see players on that list and they go, I think I'm going to avoid that guy. Could it be something like that?
I do think like when I did the Scott Fish poll, now I did my projections to kind of understand the player values and everything, but then I just mostly drafted off vibes, and that was kind of fun. Yeah. So I do that sometimes. So, but I do think it's a rankings thing. Although I have found a way to answer this question.
I'm sorry. Let me get 2 more names from Dave, and then we'll go to Heath.
Lamar Jackson's another one. All the quarterback ADPs are pushed up, but he's the one who I think is the most egregious as a late 3 pick. I think he's more of a round 4 or round 5 type guy, definitely in the tier behind Burrow and Justin Fields. Same tier, but behind those guys. And I think people are making a mistake pushing too hard for Darren Waller. His ADP right now is early round 6. I've seen him go in round 5. It's great that he had a 44% target share on one drive in a preseason game. And I think he's going to be the target leader in New York, but I don't think it's going to be by a huge margin. Yeah. So he's someone I'm avoiding that whole tier of tight ends, to be honest with you.
I love
Waller, Kittle, and Goddard.
Thanks. It's beautiful. Thank you, Dave. All right, Heath, how are you going to answer this question?
I'm going to answer it by telling you the guys that I am ranking lower than I am projecting.
Okay.
So that would be the guys that I'm avoiding, even though I have them projected for more points. And it would be Cooper Kupp. It would be Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Darren Waller. That must be it. And you can kind of tell what all those guys have in common.
Yeah. Age.
They're all old.
All right, so let's go through this. When would you take Kupp?
I've got him 8th.
When would you take Eckler?
6th.
When would you take Derrick Henry?
16.
Is Eckler RB2 for you?
No.
Who is?
I'm pulling it up. Well,
sorry.
Right. He is RB5 in non-PPR. He would be RB4 in half PPR. He is RB2 in full PPR.
Who is ahead of Eckler in half PPR?
Bijan, Barkley, McCaffrey.
In that order.
That's it.
No, McCaffrey, Barkley, Bijan.
I think you definitely should have
First
said
order.
in order.
What?
You definitely should have said it in order. I'm glad, Dave, because I thought for a second Bijan was RB1 for you.
My eyes were about to fall out of my head.
Well, a lot of people I've been getting that question. Can I take Bijan number 1, number 2? All right. Where would you take Aaron Jones? Because I thought you actually liked Aaron Jones quite a bit.
Well, if it wasn't discounting him for age, he would be he'd be a 2-3 turn guy.
Okay.
End of round 3.
But so you still, I think, are ahead of him in ADP. You're ahead of it.
Right. I've not drafted him very often, but if I'm at the end of round 3, I'll draft him.
Okay. All right. Coming up today, we're also going to talk about SuperFlex and IDP. So if you are in one of those formats, we did both of those yesterday. We did a mock SuperFlex and a real IDP draft yesterday. We'll give you some words of wisdom there. Draftathon is a week from now. You know about that. Go to tinyurl.com/FFT donate. We raised $150 on our live stream last night for St. Jude. That was terrific. But we want to raise a whole lot more. There's still a spot in the Leftovers League available. It used to be called the For the People League. This is a really fun podcast league. Heath and I share a team, and you can compete against us. And right now, $1,215 right now is the high bid. And we've got 1 day left to go ahead and make that bid. A little bit over 24 hours left. So Thursday at 7 p.m., I believe the bidding ends. We have 40 bids on it. Okay, join the podcast league. Private call with Dave Richard is going for $510. You're a popular guy, Dave Richard.
Nice. Thank you for that donation, guys.
How much did you pay them to make you that tall in the picture there?
What do you mean?
Adam.
I'm a tall guy. I'm not.
No, I'm talking about Adam.
In what picture?
Oh. Yeah.
That's on the screen right now.
Sorry. I'm standing on a phone book.
You're standing on a desk.
It's a great picture of us, isn't it?
It's not bad, but if it were to size, your shoulders would barely be in the picture.
And it goes in order of athleticism from Jamie, Dave, Heath, Adam. I love it. Anyway, there's also a guest appearance on the Draftathon that you can bid on. So please go to tinyurl.com/FFT donate. You can be on the Draftathon. What else do I need to tell you about? The podcast league. I've gotten a bunch of submissions. Give me something creative if you can. Send an email to fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. That's the letter I. Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Put podcast league in the subject line. The draft is Monday night, next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you cannot make that time, do not submit to be in the league. And we've got a few shows that are airing on CBS Sports Network next week. Monday, Tuesday, and Friday next week will be on CBS Sports Network, which is freaking awesome. Very excited for that. 10 to 11 on Monday and Tuesday. 10:30 to no, I'm wrong. 11 to noon on Monday and Tuesday, right? 11 to noon. Yeah, I think so. 10:30 to 11:30 on Friday. 11 to noon on Monday and Tuesday. 10:30 to 11:30 on Friday. We'll be on CBS Sports Network talking fantasy.
Is this a big deal, Adam?
Yeah, to me it is.
I would say so. So we usually don't ask our audience to like help us out. You know, sometimes with like podcast award voting, we ask, and obviously the draftathon. If you guys wouldn't mind watching or just setting your DVR,
Yeah,
be kind of cool.
Yeah, it'd be great.
It'd be a nice way to help us out. So if we've helped you, help us.
And help us help you. And all right, we got a poll up here. Poll is there a difference between an avoid list and a bust list?
And we've been canceled from cable TV.
I will tell you the results when we come back. Welcome back. We got news and notes, a lot of them. An update on Jackson Smith and Jigba and the Seahawks passing game. Baker Mayfield being named the starting quarterback. First, though, is there a difference between a bust list and an avoid list? And this is where I feel like I'm really connected to the people because 71% said yes, 23% said no, and 7% said I'm confused. All right, let's get.
How many said C results?
That wasn't an option. This was a Schaefer poll.
I'm confused is good enough.
Yeah. So Aaron Rodgers, before we get to the JSN thing, Dave, you quote tweeted something about Aaron Rodgers raving about Breece Hall and how good he looks. And you said something like, if Breece Hall is there at pick 45 or something, take him. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah. I'm all in on Breece Hall. I'm excited that he's practicing with the team. This is the second person on the Jets to talk about how fast he's running on the GPS. Sounds like he's making good progress back on the knee. And it sounds like he'll be an impact player. And if Aaron Rodgers has gotten a look at him and he goes, oh, this guy's pretty darn good, I'd like to get him involved in the offense, then that guy's going to get involved in the offense. So I'm not taking him in round 3. That's way too soon. And, okay, I've got him ranked. I'm ranked 40th in PPR. Would I take him at 40? I don't think I have to because I've got so many other guys that are going to go after him ahead of him in my rankings. So maybe I would avoid him at 40th, but by no means is he a bust. And if I see him in late round 4 or into round 5, I am taking Breece Hall almost whether I need him or not.
This is an interesting
winning upside.
An interesting discussion, I think, because like that Breece Hall at 40. And I think you're right. Like if you have a guy ranked at 40 and it's pick 40, there's a pretty good chance there's somebody you have ranked at 36 or 37 that's still there.
Sure.
But you are on the clock at pick 40 and you think, he's not going to go pick 44 or 45 or whatever, but you're not going to pick again until pick 56. There's a pretty good chance that Breece Hall's gone. Are you saying that you'd take somebody that you had ranked behind Breece Hall?
No.
Even if you might not get, if Breece Hall is the top ranked player at 40, you'd take him at 40.
Sure. And the context is there are a number of running backs I would take ahead of him. There's Aaron Jones, Etienne, Pierce, Gibbs, Ramondre. And for now, I have Najee one notch ahead of Breece Hall. I don't know if I can flip Najee below Breece Hall. That's the one that I just look at and I go, maybe. Might depend on what my team looks like by the time I'm picking at 40th overall. If I really struck it big with my first 3 picks, I guess, then I might do it. I might just keep chasing that upside, that dreamy, imaginary upside.
Look at the ADP in NFC drafts over the last week. And I like NFC. You can set a date range. RBs go super low. That's one of the big differences between NFC and the other websites I see is that wide receivers go earlier in this and running backs go later. Sorry. But Breece Hall is RB 16. He's going 53rd overall.
Right.
Etienne, Mixon, and Aaron Jones are 13, 14, and 15. Then it's Breece Hall. Then it's Javonte Williams at RB 17.
Yeah.
And then Ken Walker, 18, Dobbins, Cook, Madison, Pierce.
So I got Javonte Williams, I think, in round 7 or 8 in our IDP draft. And I was obviously thrilled. I have Javonte Williams ahead of Breece Hall. What's the argument for, like, Javonte's back sooner? We've been discounting him because he's going to be in this shared role with Samaje Perine, but Samaje Perine is not near as big of threat as Dalvin Cook. So if Javonte's more recovered and has less competition, I like, why the oof that Javonte is so close to Breece Hall in ADP?
Because I don't think he's as good of a player.
I'm just surprised by it, Heath. It hasn't even been close. And now being back to back in just one website's ADP over the last.
And I did notice, like, in CBS PPR leagues, Breece has fallen 13 spots. He's down to RB20 at pick 53.
Yeah. Him in the 40s would be crazy to me, but I don't know, man. Like in round 4, well, because I'm used to seeing all those really exciting wide receivers go in round 4, Hopkins and Judy and DJ Moore, and it's a really good wide receiver round. Typically for us. But all right, anyway, let's go to our next news item. It is Terry McLaurin could play week 1. Now JSN. Jackson Smith and Jigba had surgery or will have surgery for a broken wrist. His timetable is unclear. They have not ruled him out for week 1. I don't think a lot of people think he'll be back for week 1, but it's possible. They open with the Rams, then they're at the Lions, Carolina, at the Giants, Monday Night Football. I plan on going to that game. See y'all there. JSN. All right. Dave wants to do his projections for Seattle wide receivers. But first of all, guys, how long should fantasy managers think? If we're drafting today and we take JSN, what should we expect? And I know it's hard to know, but we have to at least give people a guideline. What should they think for the timetable here?
I don't think that my timetable for when I think he could be the number 1 wide receiver for Seattle's changed, which is the second half of the season. But I wasn't planning on starting him week 1.
Right.
And so you definitely shouldn't plan on that. I think maybe you're thinking now that maybe by week 3 or week 4, I'll feel comfortable starting him.
Okay. All right, Dave, what do you got for projections here?
Well, I wanted to compare my projections to Heath's projections just to see how close or far away we were on all 3 of the Seahawks. Are we doing JSN first or last?
Let's go Metcalf, Lockett, JSN.
Okay, so Metcalf I've got at 135 targets, 85 catches, 1,079 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That is 14.2 PPR points per game.
How many catches?
85.
Okay, so I think the only difference is I basically have him with 10 fewer targets.
Okay,
because I've got 126 targets, 79 for 990 and 7.5. Okay. So like the ratios are almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that I have 10 fewer targets for DK than you do.
Okay, so neither of us have him projected for 15 PPR points per game. Adam, if you don't mind, can you look at the ADPs for these guys, including DK in full PPR?
Yeah, I will.
That way we can compare where they're going with what the production might be.
Yeah, I'll use Fantasy Pros full PPR.
Okay, and I do expect DK to be less affected by JSN being in Seattle than Lockett.
Metcalf is wide receiver 15. He is a 3rd round pick. Let's go to Lockett's projections.
Okay. So a little rich for a guy who might not get 15 PPR points per game. In fact, he hasn't even gotten 14 PPR points per game each of the last 2 seasons. Lockett, 122 targets, 78 catches, 982 yards, 6 touchdowns, 16 games, 13.3 PPR points per game.
So I think you're a little low on the efficiency for Lockett. Mm-hmm. Which is easy to be because he is one of the most efficient wide receivers of all time, and he's 30 years old. So if you want to ding him for that, I think that's okay. I've got him at 115 targets, 81 catches, 1,002 yards, 6.6 touchdowns.
Okay. I think he's going to run a little further downfield this year because of JSN being there. I think JSN is their solution to cover 2 and short and mid-range throws. And I don't know if Lockett's going to pick up as many. So that's why I've made him less efficient. And it's interesting. I have more targets for him than you do. ADP on Lockett, Adam?
Wide receiver 28, 74th overall.
fine.
I think that's really good value for a guy that we're projecting to have north of 13 PPR points per game.
Well, yesterday, I think I saw the news, and I thought JSN would probably be back for week 1. I feel like the timeline got a little bit more pessimistic as the day went on when we heard from Pete Carroll, but I took Pickens over Lockett, and I hate myself for it. I should not.
Oh, you might not once the season gets going.
I don't know. I think it was a mistake, and I think this is, not to derail this projections thing, but should we be boosting Metcalf and Lockett? You guys have been calling Metcalf a bust for a while because he's going in the middle of the 3rd round. He's going before a big group of wide receivers that you like better than him. And, in our drafts, when we, just our internal drafts, whatever, he's usually kind of a mid to late 4th round pick. Do you still feel that way? Should we be boosting Metcalf and Lockett with this JSN news?
Has DK been worth a round 3 pick without JSN?
Look,
one time in his career.
Answer the question that I don't want to get into that again.
But JSN's going to miss at most 2 games.
But
I think the answer is no.
He's also a rookie who's never played before that now has a preseason injury. So should you boost Lockett and or Metcalf?
No.
I would say no.
Okay.
In fact, I did not, nor did I move down JSN. So now let's get to JSN's projections. I do have him projected for 16 games. 106 targets, 71 catches, 823 yards, 7 touchdowns, 12.2 PPR points per game.
You're higher on him as well. That's an insane touchdown rate.
I know.
70, 834, and 5.5 on 104 targets.
So almost the same for all 3 of these guys.
Yeah.
ADP on JSN, AA.
Wide receiver 36, 95th overall. Just ahead of Jordan Addison.
Almost right where I have him, but I have Addison higher.
Yeah, me too. Based on 2 nerds projections and the ADP that Adam's telling us, Lockett seems like the best value. Rinse, wash, repeat when it comes to the Seattle wide receivers.
Okay. So that covers the Seattle wide receivers. Nobody else can. Baker Mayfield named the starting quarterback for Tampa Bay. He played 12 games last year. He scored single-digit fantasy points in half of his games. And that's in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. But look at the start. Look at the schedule for Mayfield at Minnesota and then Chicago. His first 2 games. I know Minnesota made a lot of upgrades on defense, and Chicago did too. I'm not sure about their secondary, but those would be 2 beautiful matchups. But does anybody care starting the season for Baker Mayfield?
Okay. Maybe it keeps Kyle Trask on the bench until week 4.
Right. Trask is going to play at some point.
Sanders said he'll absolutely be ready for week 1 at Atlanta, then New Orleans in his first 2 games. Peter King of NBC Sports said we should be really, really careful drafting Bijan Robinson because there are too many mouths to feed. Peter King also said that he stinks at fantasy football and we should take it with a shaker of salt and not a grain of salt.
I don't know how he can say that after Arthur Smith took this guy as a top 10 pick. Like, obviously, a top 10 rookie pick in Arthur Smith offense is going to be just fantasy gold.
I can't tell if you're doing a bit. I can't tell. I feel like that was dripped in sarcasm. Drenched
it was.
In sarcasm. Okay.
Because he's taken a top 10 skill position player each of the last 2 seasons, and they've not been fantasy
missed. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good argument against Bijan. The argument for is that he's an unbelievably talented running back who's looked great on the field, both in preseason games and practice. And this team was like the best in football at running it last year with Mariota under center and Tyler Algier getting 1,000 yards.
Bijan Robinson really looked so fast.
Oh my God.
Was really
same thing in practice against the Dolphins. Although you couldn't really tell, you could see the cuts against the Dolphins. They did a lot of red zone the day I was there, so you couldn't really get an idea for long speed. But if you've watched him play football, you've seen it. And the way that they were lining him up, he was in jet motion multiple times with Algier in the backfield. He lined up wide. He lined up in the slot. He's going to be, and he was unguardable in like goal to go 7-on-7 drills. He scored a touchdown every time. And he would have had a touchdown. I don't know if you watched the game. You can't see it on the film.
Oh, he's wide open.
he was wide open.
Yeah.
The play after London had the catch,
Yeah.
but the Bengals challenged it. So it was a combination of poor coverage, obviously, by Cincinnati, but he was wide open for another touchdown catch.
Well,
he's gonna get like 6 touchdowns receiving.
I mean, I cannot believe Ritter didn't throw that football. That was really pathetic. But anyway, don't comment. Jets left tackle Dwayne Brown will come off the PUP list today. Their offensive line is healthy now. The Athletics' Paul Denner thinks that Chris Evans could be the Bengals passing downs back. Chris Evans.
He's gonna be. That's what he did best in college. He ran the ball a lot in college too, but like that's what he's best at.
So do you handcuff Joe Mixon? I shouldn't have said it that way. Do you draft a handcuff for Joe Mixon?
Deeper leagues, you could. I wouldn't in a standard or PPR 14 team, 12 manager league.
I'm not really into handcuffs, but I don't mind drafting a Bengals backup running back.
Heath's into whips.
Chris Evans?
I think I need to move him ahead of Chase Brown. Yeah.
I think you have to, unfortunately.
Gave with a zinger there. I like that. By the way, Joe Mixon only played 47 snaps on third down last year. Samaje Perine played 136. Here's a hidden, bust factor for Joe Mixon. And I said this about Josh Jacobs, Mixon, Ramondre, I'd say, but he might play more on third down. What if they just don't throw to the running backs on first and second down as much? The Bengals had the third most targets to running backs on first and second down last year. The year before, they were 30th in running back targets on first and second down.
But you know what happened? Like, I don't think teams are just going to decide they're okay with Jamar Chase running down the sideline in single coverage like that happened 2 years ago. They got the Patrick Mahomes shell coverage treatment, and so they started throwing underneath a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, and they will continue to do that, but this was sort of an extreme version of that. I could see the ADOT going up or the air yards per pass attempt going up for Burrow. It was pretty damn low last year, and just a lot of dump offs. Maybe that could change. I'm just saying Mixon is not a third down back. He caught a lot of passes. He's not a third down back. People just need to be aware of that. And Mike Gesicki and Ty Montgomery both returned to practice for the Patriots. Who's
great.
the third down back for the Patriots, you think?
It could be Ezekiel Elliott if it's a passing down. If it's like 3rd and 7, and they got to have an extra protector for Mac Jones.
Okay.
I think it really depends on if Bill O'Brien's going to draw up as many screenplays as they did last year. If they're going to use their running back more in protection, I agree it will be Zeke.
All right, to the avoid list here. Dave's avoid list. This is based on Fantasy Pros, half PPR ADP. Najee Harris, we already talked about. Lamar Jackson, we talked about. Darren Waller, we talked about. But you're really avoiding Darren Waller 62nd overall?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Guy who's missed at least 6 games each of the past 2 years. I don't see him being back to his dominant ways in New York. I still believe this offense is going to spread the ball around. I think what happened when they got in the red zone? You were there, Adam. 2 plays in the red zone. What happened to Darren Waller?
He threw a touchdown to a different tight end,
and you know why? Because Darren Waller was running interference for him because he drew a double team.
All right, but I mean,
he's going to get covered down there. It's going to be difficult for him.
Good players always get covered down there, don't they? I mean,
Darren Waller has one season where he scored more than 3 touchdowns.
But even if he scores, let's say, how many touchdowns do you think
he'll score more than 3?
How many touchdowns?
I think I have him at 5.
I don't think I've projected him. You know what? I might have.
All right. Let's say Darren Waller scores 5 touchdowns. Is he going to be a bust at 62nd overall?
It depends. You got to compare it to Kittle and Goddard. We've already talked about how Goddard has never had more than 5 touchdowns in a season. You know what it's going to come down to? It's going to come down to whether or not I'm right about the targets and whether or not Darren Waller's on the field. Because everybody's going to say, oh, he was a bust. He only played half the season. If he gets hurt again, no reason to believe that his talent has dropped off. Although he did drop that pass that he got when he got hit.
Smashed. Yeah.
I do think it's like there are certain players who we're discounting because of age and or injury history. And I usually say, if you get hurt, are you really a bust? But if one of the reasons that we're scared to draft them is because of their injury history, then it should be factored in. But I think the other question is just how much, like, do the there's a lot of projecting going on in this Darren Waller bounce back season about the Giants turning into a more pass heavy team, about Daniel Jones supporting a number one weapon, about the passing game being good. So yeah, like if he scores 5 touchdowns and he has 800 yards receiving, then I do think he's going to be a bust at the 5-6 turn.
I've got a projection for him.
All right, let's finish up on Waller here. Go ahead.
I only am playing 13 games. I don't know if Heath does this. I don't know if you deduct games in your projection.
No.
For players. Okay, well, I did.
Well, some I do.
Okay. I have him getting 6.5 targets per game. In 13 games, it's 84 targets. Catch rate of 62%, so that's 52 grabs. 12.1 yards per catch is 629, and 6 touchdowns in 13 games. So let's just say I'm right, and he does exactly that in 13 games. It's still good. It's 11.6 PPR points per game, which is why I have him as my, I think, tight ends 5 or 6.
All right. You said basically avoiding that whole range of tight ends.
Yeah, well, it's the Waller, Kittle, Goddard range.
Is that it's 11 points per game at the 5-6 turn good enough from a tight end for you, Adam?
Yeah, I think so.
But compare it to other positions.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Like that's
maybe a little low, like 12, I think would be. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's where you take a tight end like that if you really want to say, I want a guy who I don't have to stream. You basically say you don't want to stream tight ends, but you don't want to spend, a top 30 pick on a tight end.
So that was Goddard last year, basically. He was 11.9. Hawkinson was 12.6. It's a little low. I'd say like a little bit more than that. Because you can probably get, 10 points 5 rounds later.
Right. So if you just heard my projection and you think that I'm full of BS, you need to be one of the people going after Waller in round 5.
All right.
Wait, he never gave his projection.
I think I've got him at 10.9 fantasy points per game. Okay. So basically the same thing.
All right. Dave's avoiding Ken Walker at 40th overall.
Too soon. As much as we can sit here and make the case for him, to me, it's almost 20 picks too soon.
Yeah, he's my most drafted player, but I would never take him there.
Yeah.
Heath?
Yeah, I think we've talked about Ken Walker a lot as a bust and as an avoid. I think he really needs an injury to Zach Charbonnet to have big upside. And I think he's a risk. So I think it's a low floor and a lower ceiling thing for me.
I can't get an answer out of Seattle on whether or not he'll be their goal line guy. I figured by now it might be obvious if he were. Like someone would tell me, someone who's been watching their practices would tell me, oh yeah, he's their guy, not Charbonnet.
Well, how many times has he practiced?
I guess that's a fair point.
Yeah, he hasn't practiced much, right?
Yeah. I think like that, but he is one of those guys that's really interesting to think about, like what is upside, because he makes really big plays, and so it seems like he's got upside. But if you're not the passing downs back, and you're not a workhorse running back, then do you really have upside?
No, but if he's getting the majority of the carries, I don't think anybody's going to fault you if you say 1,200 yards if he stays healthy. And if he's getting short yardage goal line, look, I think this team's going to be pretty good all the way around. 9-10 touchdowns, if I'm getting really aggressive.
Yeah. All right.
Well, we will be de-pantsed if he does that. That is not a good look.
It's a lot of touchdowns. That'd be a very good.
Right. But that's the upside play for him. And he doesn't need a lot of catches to come through on that.
That's Ken Walker, Javonte Williams, 66th overall, DeAndre Swift. Yeah, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, Dalvin Cook between 65th and 68th overall. Javonte, Swift, and Cook.
Javonte is the one that I'm probably closest to of that group, but I still think it's just a little too early, especially in full PPR. Nervous about him getting, certainly the types of catches like we saw in the preseason game. One of his targets was actually a great play by him. He was just running a go route and he realized that Russ was in trouble. Came back toward Russ, made a great catch along the sideline. Another one was a flip throw from Russ, like Russ was under pressure because his offensive line stinks. And so he just flipped it to Javonte, who was like right place, right time, gain of 4 yards. I don't know how many plays there will be like that for him over the course of the season. I think P. Ryan's there to play in passing downs. I think P. Ryan will lead the running backs in catches. And I feel like Javonte is going to need a lot of touchdowns to really be good. He strikes me as the type of running back that's going to get you between 9 and 12 points per week, regardless. Well, 9 through 12 in PPR, 8 to 11 in non-PPR. Like, it'll be solid.
One catch per game.
1 or 2 catches per game.
Okay.
What if Javonte's playing the Kamara role and P. Ryan's the Mark Ingram?
I'd be surprised. I don't know if either guy profiles as Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I don't know if either guy profiles.
Like when healthy, Javonte Williams is a faster back. He's better in space than P. Ryan, and P. Ryan's got 20 or 30 pounds on Javonte.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wonder if maybe we got those roles wrong. But I like Javonte in that range. I agree completely with Dave on the other two guys.
All right, Heath's avoid list. Do you want to go through every name, or do you want to just kind of give a sort of a broader look at this?
I think I've talked about all of these guys. I didn't do a very good job. Let me see. Is there anybody on my list that we didn't talk about? No.
I see Nick Chubb on an avoid list, and I think that's got to be discussed.
Well, it's a full PPR league, and he's going in basically the first round. I think you've got to be a top 5 running back, maybe a top 3 or 4 running back to be worth a first round pick in PPR. And Nick Chubb's done that once in his career, and now he's turning 28 years old. I think you have to project a career year for Nick Chubb for him to be worth his ADP. And I don't want to do that with a running back of his age on an offense with as many questions as the Browns have.
Chubb's ADP is 13th overall. I notice you have Mahomes at 9. You're avoiding. Burrow at 33. Herbert at 38. So that's 3 of the top 6 or 7 quarterbacks here. So what does that mean for your quarterback strategy if you're avoiding Mahomes? This is CBS ADP, by the way. Yes. Mahomes in the first round, Burrow and Herbert in the 3rd round, Herbert maybe in the early 4th round. If you're avoiding them, and what does that mean for you, especially if you have a late pick in the first round, because all these guys basically line up toward the end of the first, end of the 3rd, beginning of the 2nd.
Right. Well, that it just illustrates that, like, obviously Jalen Hurts at pick 14 or 15 or whatever, I'm not picking him either. Mahomes, Burrow, and Herbert were the furthest from where I have them ranked. Fields is actually going about where I have him ranked. So based on CBS rankings, my strategy would probably be draft Justin Fields. And if I miss him, draft Tua or Anthony Richardson. Those are the 3 quarterbacks in the top 10 rounds who are being drafted at a place where I feel pretty good about them. But I drafted Mahomes yesterday or 2 days ago at 19 overall. So not entirely avoiding him, but not as much as I love him, I'm not taking him in round 1. Right. And I'm not taking Burrow. If I'm taking a quarterback I'm not taking a quarterback in round 3. But if I'm taking a quarterback in round 4, it's going to be one of the rushers, Fields or Jackson.
And I think Burrow is interesting because our ADP has Burrow going 33rd overall. Looking at NFC ADP over the last week, Burrow is QB4 and he's going 38th overall. So that's pretty rich, but I think it's pretty realistic because I'm seeing it in some drafts of Burrow falling because he's got that little injury designation on him.
Mm-hmm.
And, I didn't love the draft that I did yesterday in the IDP league, but one of the things that I felt good about was I passed on Josh Allen. I had the 1st overall pick. I passed on Josh Allen at the 2-3 turn, and I got Burrow later. Was it the 5-6 turn? I mean, probably was. Hopefully it was 7-8 turn. But
I don't think that's where
probably not, right? So when did I took Burrow, at the 4-5 turn. I had the turns wrong. But I was fine with that. Would you guys take Burrow in the 4-5 range?
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping to get him at a value. But if you don't think he's going to last much longer and you feel like that's still not a bad place to take him, then take him.
I would, yeah, in a full PPR, I wouldn't take any of these guys at the 3-4 turn. Non PPR, Jackson and Fields get pretty close to that for me. But I do think like passing on, I don't know. I think there's a pretty big difference between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. So if it's Josh Allen at the 2-3 or Burrow at the 4-5, I would rather take Allen. I mean,
yeah, I agree with you in a 4-point per passing touchdown league. 6-point per passing touchdown league. You feel the same way though?
Yeah, because we did see Joe Burrow do it for 8 games last year, or 9 games, so 29 fantasy points per game. But we've seen Josh Allen do that for 3 seasons. And I think that projection wise, you're looking at probably a 4 to 5 point difference between those two guys. I don't know that you get a 4 to 5 point difference in a 2-round swing at other positions like that.
Fair. All right. So let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk about the SuperFlex draft. We'll talk about the IDP draft. We'll give you some tips there. We'll be right back. Don't forget to send us emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. And we've got a mailbag. We record it every Friday. It publishes, audio-wise, publishes on Saturday. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can watch the mailbag before Saturday. But if you're watching, please hit the donate button and hit the like button. We'd really appreciate it. All right. SuperFlex thoughts. Let me give you the last 3 championship round teams, like the last 6 teams to be in the championship round of our 12-team SuperFlex league and what they did at quarterback. And so I always say there's just different ways to get the job done in SuperFlex. Last year, it was Marone and Dave. Marone took quarterbacks at 2.2 and 311. Justin Fields at 311. Dave took quarterbacks at 1.3. That was Mahomes, and Cousins at 3.3. So you both had your quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds.
2 of the first 3 picks were QBs.
2021, RJ White took Kyler Murray in round 1 and Jalen Hurts in round 3 and did not draft a third quarterback. But Dave also, I don't know if you won. I don't think you won. I think you lost in the finals 2 years in a row, actually. But it's pretty good. Good job.
Thanks for bringing that up.
You didn't lose in the final.
Are we going to talk about the history of the IDP League next?
Yes.
Dave basically tied in the final, and then we still had obviously we had the Bills Bengals game last year. But 2 years ago, you drafted Dak Prescott 1.10, and then you drafted Trey Lance in the 6th round and Drew Lock in the 9th round, and you made the championship. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, you struggled at those 2 quarterbacks.
I might have been able to win the championship if I hadn't have drafted those guys.
Well, you did a good job. 2020, Thanks. Ben Gretsch won, and he had quarterbacks at 111 and 2.2 in Kyler and Russell Wilson. But Marone Berkson, who won last year, lost in the finals, and he didn't take a quarterback until round 3. Drew Brees in round 3, Ryan Tannehill in round 7, Drew Lock in round 8. So
Drew Lock seems to be the key to victory.
Yeah. Just draft Drew Lock and
what the hell? All right. So anyway, different ways to get it done. But what are your overall SuperFlex thoughts, Heath?
I would like to get one of the elite guys early. I'm probably going to take one in the first 2 or 3 rounds. I think where people make a mistake is chasing the QBs in round 3, 4, 5. I think last night in our SuperFlex mock, I don't remember how far he fell, but like it was a Russell Wilson. I almost took Russell Wilson 2 or 3 rounds in a row. And then I finally took Russell Wilson as my second quarterback in round 5 or 6. But you do get to that point to where the guys who were going to take quarterback early already have 2. And you go through a little bit of a dry stretch where there's just not a quarterback taken, or maybe there's one, maybe Jordan Love was taken before Russell Wilson or something like that. So I do think there's that gap where you need to wait.
Well, which quarterbacks are you comfortable with as your number 2 quarterback? I imagine if it were Baker Mayfield, he wouldn't be very happy about it. But if it were Jordan Love or Kenny Pickett, would you be okay with that?
I'd be fine with it. Sam Howell's fine.
Okay. How about you, Dave?
I mean, I prefer to take 2 with my first 3 picks in a SuperFlex or a 2 QB league. I did not do that in our mock yesterday. And I took 1 quarterback early. I think it was Herbert. And then who are my 2 quarterbacks after? I waited a while. Ritter is my 3. I don't even remember who my 2 is, but it's ugly.
Yeah, you have a loaded team except for quarterback, basically.
Right.
Maybe tight end, too. I can tell you in just a moment. But
Bryce Young.
Team.
Yeah, Bryce Young. And you know what? Like when I got Bryce Young, I was breakdancing because I was excited that I didn't have to settle for Mac Jones or Desmond Ridder as my QB2. At least I got a quarterback in Bryce Young who has some upside. I know we didn't really see it in the preseason, but he's got something there. We know that. We saw him play in college. But that's usually not the strategy I employ. I just got faced with amazing values at other positions all the way through the draft.
Yeah, Justin Herbert was your pick at 110, then Eckler, then in the third round, Olave, then Derrick Henry, then DeAndre Hopkins, Drake London, James Cook. At that point, there really weren't a lot of great quarterbacks left, so you just kept waiting. I was the first one to take 3 quarterbacks last night, and actually we did a St. Jude donation thing where I was allowing people to pay $25 to make my picks. So they made most of my first 4 picks, and then like one or two more after that. I had McCaffrey, Barkley, and Garrett Wilson. I didn't love the start. And then I had Aaron Rodgers in round 4, then Jordan Love, which is fun. Rodgers and Love. I took Kyler Murray though as my third quarterback. Back to back picks. I went Rodgers, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray. Murray's an interesting player. If you're not strong at quarterback and you want to take a swing for the fences, as your third quarterback, thought that was I was actually happy with that. I have no idea how it would turn out. We're not playing it out, but it was interesting.
He is my most drafted quarterback so far in redraft leagues this year because he's just like he goes undrafted in a lot of one quarterback leagues, and I do think that he's the type of guy who, if he gets to week 7 or week 8 and he's Kyler Murray, well, that's an enormous value.
So how about, this was an interesting draft last night. We usually do 6-point per passing touchdown league, SuperFlex. This was 4-point. And I do think that contributed to a little bit of a slide, especially in the second round. We had only 2 quarterbacks taken in the second round, Deshaun Watson and Tua Tagovailoa. Then we had 5 in the third round. But Dave, what changes for you in 4-point versus 6-point?
You know the deal. Those rushing touchdowns count a little bit more. The passing touchdowns count a little bit less. So the quarterbacks don't quite give you the same amount of production. It makes you want to pivot toward the running quarterbacks a little bit more. So for example, in this format, I don't have rankings for 4-point. We all should. I don't think Mahomes would be my number 1, and I don't think he'd be my number 2 either.
Well, I'm less interested in that, I guess, and how in 4-point league it changes drafting other positions versus quarterback. I mean, do you care less about your SuperFlex?
Right. So generally, no. It's more about the order of the quarterbacks that go.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I do like that. I've got Mahomes projected for 115 more points in 6-point per pass touchdown leagues than QB 12 and also QB 11 and QB 13 because they're all the same. The difference is like 95 points in 4-point, and Josh Allen's actually QB1. So I do think that that it's kind of like wide receivers in non-PPR. That they get scrunched closer together.
Do you think in a SuperFlex league that it is easier to pass up on a quarterback in the second round? Let's say you took a quarterback in the first round, that it's easier to pass up on a quarterback in the second round if you have an early pick, because I feel like maybe by the middle of the third round, the top 15 quarterbacks are probably off the board. And then you're looking at Russell Wilson and Pickett and Love. You said you're fine with that, Heath, but if you did feel like, okay, I want my second quarterback, I want to be someone in the Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, maybe Aaron Rodgers range. Okay, then you should probably just go ahead and take a quarterback. I'm sorry, that you want it to be no worse than those guys. Then you should probably just take QB to start because they're all going to be gone by the third round.
I think it depends on how many quarterbacks you have in that range. I don't have a big difference between Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff.
Okay.
So I'm fine. I got Russell Wilson in round 6. So I think a lot of times one of those guys is going to slide past round 3, especially in a 4-point league.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk IDP here. We'll do this quickly. We have a weird IDP draft that I don't really think makes a lot of sense to break down because I don't know a lot of people who play in 9 IDP league. You got 9 IDP spots. It's kind of crazy. You have 10 bench spots. It's a super deep league. But first of all, who are the best IDPs?
Well, maybe we should talk about what the teams that have done in the past. Do you have the record of who won that league in the past and how they did it?
Heath may or may not have had an undefeated season last year. You know, we don't know.
It's undisputed that it is undefeated.
We didn't
There was
get
no defeat.
last week.
There was no defeat.
We just don't know, Heath. I can't.
Undefeated.
I just don't feel right calling it an undefeated.
How
league.
many games did I lose?
Well, I don't know. We just didn't
0
play
is
it
the
out.
answer. No, I think like, and I get this question a lot. People send me their IDP leagues where they just start one linebacker, one defensive lineman, one defensive back, and maybe that is more common. I think most of the people who really play IDP say that's not really IDP, because if you only need to start one of each position, you shouldn't take them until the double-digit rounds. There's enough for everybody to start a really good one at every position. So I do think starting 2 or 3, we start 3 linebackers, 3 safeties, 2 defensive linemen, and a defensive flex. That does make it more like IDP where it matters. I think the first defensive player usually goes around round 5, round 6, round 7 in our league. And it's usually those high tackle linebackers. It really, really is hard to tell people where they should select the defensive players and what they should prioritize because there's not as much of a standardized scoring system. So it depends on like how are tackles relative to turnovers, relative to sacks.
Yeah.
But if it's like our league, which I think is 1 point for a tackle, 3 points for a sack, 2 points for a pick, is that right? I don't even know for sure. Then those high tackle linebackers, Foye, Aluakon, Roquan Smith, Bobby Wagner, Okereke, Nick Bolton, CJ Mosley, those are probably going to be the first guys off the board.
Do you feel like there are, basically 12 of those guys? Because if you are in a league where you only start one linebacker, one defensive lineman, one defensive back, I thought maybe there was a case to be made that you should go a little earlier to make sure, maybe I have to be the first.
I might do that with defensive linemen.
Okay.
Because it's always that's like the tight end of IDPs. It's really hard to find good D linemen, certainly consistent D linemen.
Yeah.
Yep.
My first IDP in our draft was Myles Garrett. I took him with the 4th pick in round 7.
And he's eligible where?
D-line.
D-line. Okay. Because some of those rushers, they're eligible only at linebacker, which is a very, very important distinction.
Yes.
When you have a guy like Micah Parsons, if he's eligible at defensive line, that's huge. If he's eligible at linebacker,
right,
I don't really know. I can tell you, I guess, where he ranked in our scoring at linebacker.
He's still a number 2 or number 3 linebacker and a good one. He's not the top. And like those things are not standardized across sites.
Nope.
So the best thing you can do is go find the defensive linemen who are or the linebackers who are eligible at defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the guys that, and sometimes we have, I think, guys who are playing a lot of linebacker who are eligible at safety. Those are the guys that if you can get linebackers eligible at other positions, draft those guys.
Yeah, Micah Parsons in the league that we're in, our scoring system, he would have been the number 2 defensive lineman last year behind Max Crosby. And he was like the 25th to 30. I didn't even count. Like, I don't even think he was a top 24 linebacker, Micah Parsons. So it's a huge, huge difference. Make sure you're aware of those edge rushers and where they are eligible. Okay. Any sleepers? IDP sleepers. I gave David Long of Miami at linebacker and Nicole Dean of Philadelphia at linebacker as sleepers. Dean replaces a guy in TJ Edwards from last year who was the 5th highest scoring linebacker in our format. I don't know if he'll replace him exactly, but we're talking about an inside linebacker basically filling those shoes. So David Long and Nakobe Dean were sleepers for me. Anybody have IDP sleepers?
One of my favorite guys that I discovered last year was Mike Hecht of the Rams. And on CBS, he's DL eligible. And you can check your site to see if he's eligible at that position too. But I kind of like him low-key as a good sleeper in IDP.
I was getting ready to pick him in the next to last round yesterday or 2 days ago, and somebody took him right in front of me. I was very disappointed.
Oh, another guy, I think maybe Dave, somebody took him. Azeez Al-Shire.
I took him. Yep.
When this guy played for the Niners,
he was awesome.
In for an injured player, he was like a superstar. Now he's on the Titans.
Yeah, I might have taken him a little too early. Where did I get him?
That's all right. You didn't take him early. You're good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there is such a thing as too early in an IDP league when you get to the double-digit rounds. I took him in round 12.
No,
One spot ahead of Traylon Burks.
there you go.
Exciting. Make sure you keep Chris Jones' name close by. That's another D lineman, assuming that he gets back to Kansas City soon.
Oh, what about
he wouldn't be a sleeper, but just because of the holdout, maybe he is.
well, just a couple more here. Jordan Brooks is coming back from a torn ACL for Seattle. He's a star basically when he's healthy, but and apparently he's going to be ready for week 1. And Shaq Leonard for the Colts, who
that's a good one.
Best linebacker in football, arguably, and dealt with so many injuries last year. So who do you take first? Brooks or Shaq Leonard?
Leonard.
Okay, is Leonard a star right now? Is he being drafted that way?
Let's see. Where'd he go?
I would say he's more like he has the star upside, but he comes with significant risk.
He went in round 11.
Round 11, Gary Davenport, who's the godfather of IDP, took him. So usually when Gary takes somebody, that's a good sign.
Yep. He took him right after I took Bobby Okereke, so that made me feel bad.
I got another one. Quay Walker in Green Bay was someone that I had on my queue. Somebody else got him in our draft. The results will be up on CBS Sports. You'll see a ton of names at linebacker, D-line, and DB.
Couple quick shout outs here. We have a big thank you to Spillage Village for donating $200 to St. Jude. Awesome stuff. And we have a question from the audience, someone who donated $10 from Eric, 12-team PPR shallow league, 2 receivers, 1 flex. I have pick 103, and he thinks it'll be Jamar Chase there. But would you trade down to 6 to get either Bijan or Kelsey and a higher second-round pick, or stay put at 3 and get Chase?
If you can get a really good move up in exchange to go from 3 to 6, then I would do it.
So you're getting a second. When you say a higher second, if you're getting a second in addition to that, I love it.
That's
if all you're doing is trading spots in the first and the second, then I don't love it.
Yeah,
I don't hate it if you're a fan of that group of Javonte, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle. Like one of those 3 will almost certainly be there if you make that swap. Waddle might still be there if you don't.
Maybe the answer is, how do you feel about Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor? If you like them a lot in round 2 or 3, then stay at the 3 spot, because I don't know that they're coming back to you at 6 in the 3rd round. Also, I'm not sure if you're completely swapping the whole draft board. I'm not sure. All right. I'm sorry, Eric. I think I confused you. Disregard what I said. And just
I would draft Jamar Chase.
Fine. Draft Jamar Chase works for me. Never a bad strategy. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today.